Okay. In 83 to 87, you and Eric Radcliffe developed your first record label, Reset Records. Now you have started up another label, Very Records, after 30 years. Can you tell us the difference between the two?
So the difference really is that Very is much more, is on a much smaller scale. Reset Records was actually distributed by RCA, so all of the promotion and the publicity was done by them, and we just made the records. In this instance, it's just myself and Richard doing all the work.
There's 2 albums on Very Records now. There's you and Paul Hartnell's Two Square and Reed and Caroline's Boochler and Singing. Reed and Caroline is a US synth-pop duo. How did you discover them?
I met Reed via a mutual friend of ours, a guy that fixes synthesizers in New York. He introduced us and said that Reed had written these songs and recorded these songs. So I got to hear them, and I just thought, oh, you know, this is really, this could be really good for my little label, and it just seemed to fit in with my vision of what Very Records was going to be.
And have you been listening to a Greek duo called Marsho?
No, I haven't listened to Marsho, but on your recommendation I shall do that in a bit.
In 2002 you collaborated with Martin Gore as VCMG and released an album called S. Then Martin has another solo album, MG. Do you plan to do a VC of your own?
I've got no plans to make any solo records. I think it would be incredibly boring.
After these years, why is there no
recording of this camera?
After all this time, why is there no Vince Clarke solo album?
I'm not really interested. I mean, I really like. I'm interested in collaboration. It gives me more satisfaction. If there's more, you know, I like interacting with other people. Now that I'm a bit older, it's lonely being in the studio on your own.
You are interested in creating your first VCM and VCS auto-tune system, and the module name fitted with your name, VC. How did you come up with the idea for this MIDI to CV converter with the auto-calibration?
So this was an idea conceived by my brother, Michael, and the reason that we wanted to do this was because a lot of the analogue synthesizers I have in my studio are incredibly unreliable and their tuning is crazy. So he came up with this idea and this system of keeping them stable and therefore making them much more usable.
Have you used it on Erasure's song production?
Well, the fact that it keeps my synths in tune, yes. It's used on every single Erasure production.
Nowadays, soft synths and music apps are very common and everyone can play electronic music. How do you feel about that? Do you play with those apps too?
I think it's fantastic. I think that the fact that you know this technology is actually accessible to more people is a really good thing. You know, I mean, you know, you can literally make music on your phone, and it's going to be the same quality as someone going into a really expensive studio. So I think that's an amazing advancement. As regards to using them myself, I don't really use the apps. The only app I really am into is Scrabble.
Can you share your working process of your following remixes? First of all, Depeche Mode's Behind the Wheel from 2011.
So I was asked by the record company to do that remix, and they gave me a choice of songs, and that was the one that I felt that I could work with because it was more dance orientated, and I wanted to make it into a kind of a dancey remix. It's actually the first time I really started to appreciate Martin's amazing songwriting ability.
How did it feel to be collaborating with Depeche Mode after all this time?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool, you know. I think that they were into what I was doing. I mean, Martin's really into techno, and so that remix was techno-ish, I guess, you know. So we kind of clicked.
And after that, you went on to do a cover of Fly on the Windscreen with Anna Brunn. Can you tell us more about this cover version?
Again, that's a really great song, and I tend only to work on remixes where I think I can actually add something. And obviously she has an amazing voice, and it's a great song, so I couldn't turn it down.
And the next track is Blancmange's Living in the Ceiling, 2013. Do you remember your first impression of listening to Living in the Ceiling?
So Blancmange actually supported Depeche Mode on our first tour, and I was completely blown away by them. So I've always been a fan, and Neil is a real character. So when I got asked to do this, I thought I can't turn it down. I'm going to do this. But I don't really think I did much for it. I just kind of modernised it a bit, maybe.
And it says, how did you rebuild this new version?
So the way that I work with remixes is that I'll strip them back to the vocal and then record too much stuff, rhythms and bass lines and different parts. And then when it's a complete cacophony of noise, I'll start stripping stuff back and making it sound like a remix. That's the way I work.
I had a chance to interview Erasure in Hong Kong around 1992. At that time, you mentioned that Depeche Mode feels like Bon Jovi playing synthesizers. How do you feel about Depeche Mode today?
Well, I really, really like the last two albums. Actually, I think that I think Martin's songwriting has got a lot more soulful, and as I said earlier, actually analysing and dissecting his tracks, I realised that how clever he is. So I think that the direction they've taken now actually is really interesting and cool.
Have you listened to the new album Spirit?
I've heard the single. I haven't heard the whole album, but I think the single sounds really cool. Yeah, really good.
We all really love your synth pop ballad style, like Never Never for the Assembly, One Day with Paul Quinn and Claudette with Robert Marlowe, and Erasure's Ship of Fools or If I Could, etc. Can you share with us about the song production process? Do you start composing with a guitar first? Yeah,
so most of those songs were written on guitar. They're written as folk songs, really. I mostly use guitar to write songs. Sometimes I use acoustic piano, and then all the synth wizardry or whatever you want to call it is done afterwards, because we want to make sure that the song is good in the first place before we start adding all the frills. Because if the song isn't good in the first place, then it's not going to be good after you add all those frills. You can't shine shit, as my brother would say.
Erasure's new album is entitled World Be Gone. What does that mean?
I think it means that at the moment the world is going through a really weird period. I mean, there are lots of strange things happening, not necessarily good, and I think the title reflects on that in so much as to say that when this weirdness ends, and I'm hoping that I'm pretty sure that it's just a wave, that we'll start getting back into better things and more positive things and a better world.
Besides doing remixes for other bands, you also remix Erasure, for example, the new single Love You to the Sky. Is there a big difference between remixing Erasure songs and remixing other people?
I think remixing my own stuff or Erasure stuff is much more difficult. It's obviously, if we've been working on an album for like 6 months or something, it's very difficult to get a different perspective, because what you think is that, what I've done is the best I could possibly do, so where do I take it from here? So it's, you have to really you have to really get your head away from what you were doing and put on a new head almost. And try and be a different person, really. When you're doing a remix, especially of Erasure, that's for sure. It's difficult. It's much more difficult, I think.
Yeah. With your senior experience and musical touch, how do you justify the right arrangement for your composition? And how would you decide what's better for an album version and not for a remix?
I think we always, when we write, then we always write for the album. We're not really thinking about remixes at that stage. It's you're trying to write the best song that you possibly can, and produce the best record you possibly can. So the remix the remix stuff comes later. So you do the album first, and then afterwards you decide, possibly that could make a good remix.
World Be Gone is the 17th studio album from Erasure, and you've been working with Andy Bell for almost 32 years. It's a miracle because after Depeche Mode, Yazoo and the Assembly, you've only kept relationships short. How's Erasure kept together for so long?
Two things really. I think it's mutual respect, and also there are no egos in the band. So if Andy comes up with an idea that I don't like, or vice versa, then rather than fight for our corner, then we just drop the idea and move on to the next idea, because it wasn't necessarily the best piece of work that we'd ever done, you know. So it's all about moving on, I think. And Andy's really laid back. He's a nice guy, you know. So we just keep it cool.
You're currently working on a remix for Ladytron. Can you tell me more details?
The Ladytron remix is incredibly fast. It's 150 beats per minute. So that's as much as I can say.
And is there any plans for Erasure to come to Hong Kong?
Well, we're planning a big tour for 2018, and hopefully, because we've been to Hong Kong twice already, we can come there again. I'd love to, because we met some really nice people there, including yourself, sir. So we'd like to, yes. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Thank you very much.
No problem.